Hello and welcome to the British Sitcom History Podcast. My name is Alan. I'm here as always with Gareth.
Hello.
And Gareth, we're a bit off piece today. We're doing a bit of a special. It's Halloween this week coming up, and so I thought, we should do a Halloween special. That's what sitcoms do, right? And I thought, no, they don't.
No. It's what American sitcoms do.
Yes, definitely American sitcoms. I used to watch Roseanne, and I remember they leaned into Halloween pretty heavily.
Yeah.
But yeah, in the UK, Halloween was never quite as big a thing. But it had a peak in the sort of 80s and 90s, I think.
Well, I think this is interesting, Alan, because this is we are a British sitcom history podcast. And, we try to look at sitcoms as in their cultural context and as they reflect the world in which we live. And this is a real specific point in which we and our American cousins differ. But yeah, I think, Halloween, I'm a 46-year-old man, so I'm always every 31st of October I bemoan the fact that, Halloween's a load of rubbish and we never did this when I was a kid. So it was quite interesting looking back and seeing, do sitcoms note it? Do they mark it? Did they? And when did they? So tell me more about that.
Well, honestly, I cannot find many examples at all. I mean, I remember as a kid, So I guess when I was trick-or-treating age, that was sort of in the 90s. And I did it. We went out and we got sweets off strangers. And I think there was this sort of 20-year period where it was like, okay, the American influence made it a thing. And then the whole kind of, U-tree thing stopped it.
Yeah.
When pedophiles were invented in the late 90s. And that put an end to it, I think. Or, certainly... I guess you wouldn't go out on your own as a little kid, but, an 11-year-old, 12-year-old group of friends, they would go out and trick-or-treat.
Yeah. Well, interesting. So I'm 10 years, nearly 10 years older than you, and it wasn't really a thing that we did. You obviously did with your mates, but now my son's 15 now, but when, 5 or 10 years ago, he would go out trick-or-treating, but with a group of other little kids and a parental chaperone, and, it was all very well organised. So I guess that's a difference there.
Yeah. Off the top of my head, I can only think of 2 examples of Halloween specials in sitcom.
Yeah.
And that was Time, Gentlemen, Please, that we looked at recently. And I think the main reason for that was Richard Herring was writing it on the fly and he would grab hold of anything he could to form an episode around. Yeah. So there was a Halloween episode followed immediately by a bonfire night episode.
Yeah.
And then the only one that was in my mind was an image of Rick Mayall and Adrian Edmondson in a red tights and a banana costume.
Uh-huh.
And so I was like, they must have done a Bottom Halloween special.
And how right you were.
But I tell you what, the main problem with this is, I'll tell you why I think this has not captured the attention, is because people don't tend to make sitcoms about children.
Mm-hmm.
And Halloween in the UK, at least, is a children's thing.
Yeah.
But what we'll see in Time, Gentlemen, Please, and then in Bottom as well, they're both kind of adults being abused by kids trick-or-treating.
Yes.
Kids come around trick-or-treating, it's actually just a mugging, really.
Yeah.
So that's mostly what it's about. I think another thing as well is, certainly in Britain, the scheduling is not that sure in terms of, like, what exact dates will this be going out?
I guess Roseanne was making 20-odd episodes. They knew that one of them would drop on Halloween.
Exactly.
Whereas a British sitcom, it's 6 weeks. It could go anywhere in the schedule.
Yeah, and they'll do a Christmas special. Even, this is not always true, but a lot of the time, a Christmas special will be out of the series. It will be a special, unless they really know that they're going to be on at that time of year.
Yeah.
So maybe that's part of it. You don't want to set yourself up for being in the wrong place. So let me ask you, when do you think this episode of Bottom was first broadcast?
Well, the way you asked that question implies that it wasn't October the 30th.
So this is Series 3, Episode 2 of Bottom. It's called Terror, and it went out on the 13th of January 1995.
Well, how terribly anarchic of the boys.
Well, here's a little extra tidbit for you. They actually did a Christmas special in their second series, and that went out on the 29th of October.
Brilliant.
So, yeah, I think they were just obviously thought, oh, that's good fodder for a bit of fun.
They're so postmodern, aren't they? Rick Mayall and Adrian Edmondson.
Okay, so look, this isn't going to be a full episode. We're not going to go into Bottom in full detail.
We're not doing Bottom right now.
We're not doing Bottom, haha. And
hey, that you can mock my toilet humour, but that's better than anything in this bloody episode.
That's what. Well, that's something. Yes. Well, your scorn is not going unnoticed. How dare you? So let me ask you then, because just to give a little bit of background on Bottom, you are pretty much the perfect age for Bottom. You would have been 16 when the show started. So how do you feel about it?
Well, all right. Well, let's. Yeah, I am pouring scorn. That is true, and I'll completely tip my hand here and say that I just don't like Bottom, and it's unusual because you're right. I am the right age. I should have liked it, and I liked the young ones. I liked Filthy Rich and Cat Flap at the time, of which more later, and I liked Rick Mayall and Adrian Edmondson. And I think that when they brought out Bottom and that became a thing, that was when I went off them. So I remember watching it. I watched every episode as it went out, and I think by the end of it, I just had enough of it. I just had enough of the shtick.
Yeah.
And I think it's very frenetic. It's very in your face. It's very Rick Mayall being Rick Mayall. And I get it. If you love Rick Mayall, then this is absolutely fantastic. But the truth is, I'm just kind of like, okay, enough, too much. And so now, watching it again, after a very long time since I last watched this show, I got about 5 minutes in and I thought, yeah, I've had enough of this now.
I understand what you mean. It is easy to look at Bottom and go, well, how far removed is this from the Dangerous Brothers? How far removed this is from Filthy Rich and Cat Flap? It's very much them. You know, they wrote it. It's not got Ben Elton's influence on there or anything like that. It's just them. And I think the joy of that, I think that they're obviously good friends and have this very good relationship, comes through it. And I think that matters. And I haven't watched Bottom for a long time. And so when I sat down to watch this episode, I really enjoyed it. It was making me laugh. It was silly.
Wow.
And I wouldn't say I am someone who particularly enjoys toilet humor or silly comedy like that. I like clever wordplay. But it did work for me. If I sat down and watched the box set of 18 episodes, I don't know if it would quite have the staying power, but as a one-off little
I think that's
thing,
probably true,
really
but again, we've talked about this many times before. That is not the right way to watch this.
No.
I know that's how you watch these damn things, but the point is that, you know, even just watching it 1 week at a time, again, I can remember looking forward to this when it was coming out, you know, it was being trailed, the new Rick Mayall and Adrian Edmondson thing, thinking, great, this is going to be good. And I don't think I watched that first episode and thought, oh, no, it's rubbish. I was into it. But I don't know. Did I get older? Did I just get sick of it? I don't know. But it was interesting to me now going back and watching it, and it just didn't hit me at all. I just, oh God, it was getting on my nerves. Is the truth of it.
Okay, well, yeah, I know. I can understand that. I think, and perhaps if I watch more episodes now, it would be like, okay, well, it's just sort of the same gags every time. I think actually this specific episode was, dare I say it, less violent than I'm used to, because there wasn't quite as much actual physical work. I guess because they leaned into the cattle prod element a bit more, but not quite as many pratfalls and fake punches and stuff like that, which they do very well.
Shall we run through the episode and then we can kind of branch off as and when?
Yes. So the episode starts in typical fashion, in a huge open plan apartment in Hammersmith, which is
very nice.
Supposed to be a bit of a grotty place to live, and it's certainly not in a well kept condition, but it is huge. And for anyone outside of London, yeah, you can't afford this size of apartment. And this is just their downstairs. They have rooms upstairs as well.
This was 30 years ago, though. I don't think Hammersmith was quite as gentrified in 1990.
Perhaps not.
But the set, I thought the set was interesting, actually, because it was, you know, with my Britcom pod glasses on, I was looking at the set, and they did a really good job of making it look grotty. Like there's this sort of greasy sheen on everything, and it just makes you feel like, oh God, you wouldn't want to touch anything. You wouldn't want to put anything down. They did a really good job of just making it look. Well,
you lived in a crap bed sit in London 20 years ago.
I did. Yeah, but it wasn't that greasy.
It is a very open plan space, which I guess gives them scope. Because even in sitcom, in the world of sets and on a stage, you tend to at least attempt to recreate a real life sort of living space, and they don't really, but I think that is designed specifically for what they're doing. It's very physical and very big. You need that space to be able to throw things around, and I also think you probably need that space to have so many naked flames on set, which in this episode in particular,
yeah.
I mean, well, to the point where one of the characters says, "I think we're in Q8," because there were so many flames.
That was a nice cultural reference, very much 1990 Gulf War.
Oh, well, talk about your 90s references. Okay, I have got some questions for you because there were some very 90s references that I was lost by. Well, first of all, do you remember Spot the Ball competitions? Do you remember that?
I do remember Spot the Ball competition. So this is the opening scene, and Richie and Eddie, they've entered a Spot the Ball competition. And basically the joke is that they've misunderstood and they've circled the footballer's shorts because that's where his balls are, right?
That's the joke.
Competition. Uh-huh. Now, I don't think that is a strong enough joke to open the show. And it goes on, I timed it goes on for 80 seconds, this joke, because they go back and forth making the same joke again and again.
But then
they actually spell it out. Then Adrian Edmondson goes, I wonder if they mean the football, Richie. And I'm like, I got it 75 seconds ago.
Yeah. I think there's probably a fair bit of that in their writing, where it's just, we've got half an hour to fill here. Let's just get it filled.
Yeah. But yes, no, you're right. Spot the Ball competitions were very much of their age. I would imagine that's, I don't know, maybe that is a thing. Maybe they have it on the internet nowadays, though. I don't know.
This is what I like about watching old sitcoms. These kind of weird little references to stuff that.
Well, what were the other ones you came up with? Because I spotted a couple.
A few names that got. Okay, I got three names that got thrown out where I was like, I'm gonna have to Google that because I don't know what.
Go on, ask me. Let's see if I can get them because I made some notes.
The first one was basically asking Eddie where he would want to be in his fantasy, and he says, inside Maria Whittaker's bra. Who the hell is Maria Whittaker?
So Maria Whittaker was a page 3 girl. Now there is a difference here. In the 90s, you had glamour models,
right.
People like Lindsay Dawn McKenzie who were in FHM and those lads mags. Maria Whittaker was before all of that. She was in the 80s. You didn't have lads mags. You had page 3 of a national newspaper where teenagers would get their breasts out. Nice. And this was all right until quite recently, actually.
Yeah.
Maria Whittaker was one of the most famous, I guess the most famous page 3 girl was Samantha Fox. But Maria Whittaker was very much a contemporary of hers.
See, Samantha Fox, yeah, I know that name. Maria Whittaker, I do not know at all.
Well, I must confess, I hadn't heard the name for many years. When I heard the name, I was like, bloody hell, that's a blast from the past. But yes, she was a name that would have resonated in 1990. But I tell you what, I googled her because I thought, gosh, I haven't heard of her for a long time.
Right.
And she retired in 1990 when she was 21, which then made me think, well, hang on a second. So she first appeared on page 3 of The Sun. Respected national newspaper, The Sun, at the age of 16 years and 2 months with her top off.
Well, I guess
The
16...
Sun crusading journalism against paedophiles.
I guess 16 was the legal age for that, I suppose.
Well, yeah, I guess it still is, Alan, but I'm not sure it makes it all right.
Look, you got to earn a living. It was different back then, right? You had to pay...
It was different in the 80s.
You had to help out.
Okay, so that's Maria Whittaker dealt with. What were the other ones?
Do you know what was interesting, though, about that as well? And it made me sort of think about this. There is a certain innocence to the filth that they peddle here. Of all the things you could say about your fantasy about what you're going to do to a lady, it's like, oh, I'd like to be inside her bra. It's just like, it doesn't really, it's not quite dirty, is it? There's a sort of strange naivety to it, which I think
there's a joke later on in the episode about them all being virgins. And this is perhaps a reason why it resonated with me as a 15, 16-year-old is that they are basically teenagers.
Yeah.
They're obviously not. They're all adults. Dave Hedgehog's got grey hair, but they are basically
Dave
teenage
Hedgehog,
boys.
Dave Hedgehog also has a daughter that we found out at the end of the episode. So why he's worried about his virginity? I don't know.
Good point. But yes, that's the internal logic doesn't really hold up there, does it? But the point is that their entire behaviour and demeanour is that of a 14-year-old boy.
Yes, exactly. Yes, and I think that's probably, if not very consciously deliberate, it's obviously what they're tapping into in terms of the creative process, and that is why you can be silly. We sort of talked about this, the in-betweeners. Because they're 16, that we can get away with a lot more. It's the same with Beavis and Butthead. It's you excuse their behaviour because it's ridiculous and stupid, but you all go, oh God, I remember being 14. It was ridiculous and stupid, wasn't it? Okay, so I have another reference here that I didn't get. Mangasutu Buthelezi.
Excuse me. Given the respect he's earned, he's Chief Mangasutu Buthelezi.
Oh, sorry. So at one point they're out trick or treating, and they go up to a street, and Rick says, "Oh, look, it's Chief Mangasutu Buthelezi cul-de-sac. They're all loaded here." Yeah. Now, I can't tell what level that joke's working, so I don't know who Mangasutu Buthelezi is for a start.
Well, I'm going to tell you, because in exactly the same way as Maria Whittaker. Maybe that's a little disrespectful. In exactly the same way as Maria Whittaker, that was a name that I have not heard for 25 years, but that immediately resonated and rang. I know exactly who he is. Chief Mangasutu Buthelezi was basically the leader of the Zulu race in South Africa.
Okay.
And we look back now on the end of apartheid in South Africa. Nelson Mandela saved the country and became president, and he sailed into power. But actually, at the time, it was a fight. There was a lot of violent opposition from the white people, but also from Chief Mangasutu Buthelezi, his political party, the Inkatha Freedom Party, which was basically the Zulu race. Mm-hmm. He led them, and that was the strongest opposition to the ANC. Now, eventually, the way it all turned out was that they went into a big coalition government, and everything turned out, at least in the short term, fine. But yeah, he was a name where there were killings and bombings going off, and he was the leader of that faction. It was very, at the time there was no indication that this was all going to end well. And again, it's just a name that I haven't heard for 25 years, but Chief Mangasutu Buthelezi, it just rolls off my tongue because that was one of those names that like Brezhnev and Andropov. It was just something that you heard on the news all the time. But in the context of the sitcom, Alan, it's also a little dig at Nelson Mandela House.
That's the first thing I thought of. Yeah, that's what I thought, because obviously this must be a thing, particularly in London at the time, naming these sort of new estates after reputable leaders, I guess. Like, I live in Brixton right now, and there's a road up by me, Marcus Garvey Close. It's there's a lot of that sort of stuff goes on down here. But I don't know if this is a crap area. Let's name it after someone people respect.
I think the joke in Only Fools and Horses is, this place is called Nelson Mandela House because we've got some lefty council who are more bothered about virtue signalling their support for the ANC than for actually, building some nice property.
Yeah, exactly.
Could you virtue signal in 1981? I don't know. But I think this is Mail and Edmondson having a little dig at that Only Fools and Horses and those sorts of legacy sitcoms,
But I think even in Only Fools and Horses, it's a joke, isn't it? It's
sure. Yeah. One other snippet about Chief Mangasutu Buthelezi.
Oh yeah.
In the film Zulu, you've seen the film Zulu?
Yeah, he's played by Michael Caine, right?
No, but he is in the film. So at the beginning of the film, when the missionary and his daughter go off to see the Zulu chief, and we see the tribes people dancing and all that sort of thing, the chief in that scene is played by Chief Mangasutu Buthelezi.
Method actor.
He's not quite as himself, but he is actually playing his great-grandfather, who was, Kechewayo, who was actually the Zulu chief at the time.
That is good. That's pretty cool. So, I do have another name for you that popped up.
Go
on. Well, I think it's when Eddie refuses to eat the sprout Mexican, maybe, and because it sounds terrible, and Rick says, "Ooh, hark at Egon Ronnie."
Egon Ronnie, yeah.
Who the hell is Egon Ronnie? I actually had that name rang a bell. I knew it was something to do with food, but I couldn't.
Yeah,
tell you
Egon
anything
Ronnie
more
was
than that.
this one is less known to me, but I think of Egon Ronnie as a sort of proto celebrity chef. Is that right?
He was a restaurant critic, I think, rather than a chef.
Okay.
But I think, I think he was a chef, but was more famous as a critic because he wrote guides to, restaurants.
That's right.
But yeah, that was another one. But that is really what I love about watching old sitcoms. And I think this period, the early 90s, is just spot on for me in that it's stuff I kind of understand but half remember. Whereas like stuff from the rag trade, I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna have to Google who this is. I don't know what they're talking about.
Like I say, this was right in my time zone.
Another thing we get before we really get into the Halloween stuff is a lot of very self-aware and self-conscious double entendre. Basically a Finbar Saunders comic strip in live action.
Yeah, it really punches you in the face repeatedly, doesn't it?
Can I drink your juice?
Oh, yes. Yes, of course. Go ahead. I think I'm going mad this morning.
Someone's giving our knocker a damn good banging. I'd better go and see who it is.
Righty-ho. I'll grab a hold of my sausage and give it a good seeing to.
There's a certain energy to Bottom which really comes across well in their live shows. I don't know if you've ever seen any of their... I've never seen them live, but I've seen the recorded
I think I've seen them
the
on
shows.
video, yeah.
They did quite well. They did several of them. And I think what they do comes across really well in a live show. And I think this scene where they're just throwing kind of entendres back at each other, obviously it's scripted, but that feels like it's capturing that energy, that kind of just slightly in the moment. We might say something different. I might have come up with something else not on the script and I'm going to throw it at you, try and make you corpse, that kind of thing. And I like that. I do like the energy of Bottom, but perhaps... Like I say, perhaps it would wear thin pretty quickly.
I think that is a positive for this show, is that they are clearly having a great time, and that does shine through. You can see this is two mates enjoying themselves and being silly, and that's fine. That's great. I guess I have a limited amount of attention for it.
They obviously in the live show they break the fourth wall constantly. They're talking to the audience.
Yeah,
and we actually have that in this episode when they get into a fight with some children. And they're sort of doing a comedy behind the fence fight with things flying up in the air. And Adrian Edmondson pops up and goes, "It's going very well, keep watching." Which I thought was quite unusual because I know they do that in Bottom, but I don't think it's a regular thing necessarily.
Well, if I can just, I just give a little sneak preview. We're about to release a Forgotten Sitcoms episode on Filthy Rich and Cat Flap, which is kind of what came between the young ones and Bottom. And I won't spoil that now, but yeah, look out for that on the YouTube channel and on your podcast feed. But the point I was going to make there is that in Filthy Rich and Cat Flap, there's a hell of a lot of that breaking of the fourth wall, and you can really see that here. You can see a direct line from that one series 6 episode show straight through to Bottom.
So yes, that will be going out very soon. So keep an eye out for that, all you fans of Filthy Rich and Cat Flap out there. So let's get back to the episode.
Yeah,
they decide, it's Halloween. Let's go and do some trick or treating. That's a great way to earn money. Obviously, in quite an aggressive way. They decide to take a huge, over-the-top novelty prop. Cattle prod.
It is an amazing prop, isn't it? It looks like it was rejected from Ghostbusters for being a bit OTT.
Yeah. So I don't know where they found that.
And some brilliant visual effects sparks that fly off it when it's turned on.
Don't think we get any setup to why they have a cattle prod or anything. It just says, oh, you've got the cattle prod, haven't you? Yes, here it is.
Yeah.
Okay, good. That's great writing.
But basically, that it emerges that the cattle prod is essentially a prop in order to facilitate Richie going to the toilet in his pants. I'm trying to keep this PG. Several times. We do that joke, I think, 3 times.
Three pairs of tights he has that he ruins.
Now, I've got to be honest here. I'm not sure we've ever talked about this before, but I really, really dislike poo-based humor. Like it is. Like I'm. If you can see the video of me now, I'm pulling faces. It really makes me feel uncomfortable, and I don't like it. I don't find it. It's not that I don't find it funny. I don't. It properly turns my stomach.
That
So
might
this did
be
not do it
why
for me.
you don't like Bottom.
Yes, I think that might be a factor.
That may well be a factor, because yes, they do the joke 3 times. It's not especially funny enough to get away with it 3 times.
And there's no variety in it. It's the same joke 3 times.
It's exactly the same joke, yes. In which, yes, basically Richie excellently electrocutes himself and therefore, yeah, evacuates himself. And the weird thing is as well in the edit, we literally have to cut and kind of do a fade to, as in, and time passes so that you can come back. So they,
Yeah, so you've got another pair of tights on.
like, they don't just go, oh no, I've you know, I'm trying to, how do I phrase this? Oh no, I've you know, evacuated my bowels on myself. Let's move on with the script. He has to walk home, get changed, and come back, and so we have to sit. Eddie and Spudgun have to sit and have a chat and a beer while they're waiting for him.
Yeah.
All right, why are we holding up to that the integrity of reality in sitcom here, where you've got a giant cattle prod? Hey, but speaking of timing, we all know comedy is about timing. What about this? When they when they ring the bell of the door, and Spudgun answers it before the doorbell has stopped ringing.
Yeah.
Were they worried about the edit or something? What's going on?
They've only got 27 minutes and they need to get another poo joke in.
Well, the thing is, they could easily have rung the bell and then done their little bit of shtick about who was going to be stood next to the door and all that kind of thing, which they do anyway. And then just, you know, fill the 20 seconds it takes for someone to get to the door. It's ridiculous. Like, the chime is still chiming. It's ridiculous.
Right, come on to our next victim. Here we go. Right, ring the bell.
Yeah. Oh, hello, Eddie.
Hello, Spudgun.
But yes, we do get Spudgun, and then later on we get Dave Hedgehog, who were kind of the only other real series regulars, really.
Do we ever get any? Certainly not in this episode. Do we ever get any formal introduction to these two characters? Because I don't remember knowing anything about them other than they were just these sort of weird characters who came in and out.
Yeah, I think that's it. You know, they're Eddie's friends. That's all they are.
You don't need backstory, really, do you?
No. How deep do you think it was going to get?
No, exactly.
They draft Spudgun and ultimately Dave Hedgehog to come to their Halloween party, which is the next stage of Richie's plan to make money out of Halloween. I think that's the basic idea. Trick-or-treating hasn't really played out, so they're going to throw a party and charge an entry fee. Unfortunately, you know, Dave Hedgehog only has 8 pence, but, you know, they have to take it.
That was quite a good joke. He said it's a free entry, but we want some money for beer. How much? 5 grand? I've got 8 pence. That'll do. That made me laugh.
So, we another kind of regular gag, I guess. You know, Eddie's disgraceful alcoholism, and he's got some sort of homebrew going on, which is stripping the enamel off the bath in which he's mixing it, which is basically the same joke as Richie has cooked something terribly, and that's going to knock him out for an hour and a half.
I did enjoy that when Richie was cooking at the start of the episode. His method of cooking was he got the pan out, put the food in the pan, and then set fire to it. I just thought that was quite funny.
Like I say, a lot of open flames in this show, and in this episode,
the risk assessment must have been lengthy. Yeah,
they do a whole setup with an exploding carrot. And then they just set it up and then set it on fire, and this is all in one shot. It's unedited. Eddie goes, "Oh, you better step back. It can be quite dangerous." They step back, and then it explodes like a legitimate explosion 3 feet away from their faces. And it's in some sort of little like fake glass thing that obviously explodes all over the place. Like, this is quite dangerous, really, isn't it? There's a lot
dangerous brothers, yeah.
And then, you know, they've got some sort of fire hose attached to their bottom, which sets fire to the settee. And we actually,
so after they've drunk the home brew and eaten whatever it was they ate, the joke is that every time they fart, which is often, the flame comes out of their backsides. Yeah. And again, that joke is, I'm gonna say, overdone.
Yeah. But yeah, at one point, Spudgun actually, does it and actually sets fire to the sofa.
Yeah.
And it's not a fake like they do that and then there's a prop hand, behind with a lighter setting it off. They've just obviously coated the settee with some flammable liquid.
Yeah.
And then and there you go, just stand 6 inches away from that. And then Adrian Edmondson just sort of pats it down with a pillow and then goes out. I just think this isn't safe, is it? and obviously, especially Rick Mayall, when he's doing it, he not only does it, but he also kind of dances around, like flails around in his way. And they've all got dressing gowns on that have like
right. This is
shell
interesting,
suit
Alan.
fabric.
So what you just pointed out there is one of my problems with this, and this feels like a little bit sacrilegious to say this, but I just find Rick Mayall too much. I know he's a much loved entertainer, and I sense that this is not a popular thing to say, but I just find it too much. So that's a good example there. They're all farting fire out of their backsides. But Rick Mayall just goes over the top and does it a bit more. And there's that joke that I mentioned before about, what does the devil drink? Virgin's blood. And they all look really nervous because, they're all virgins. So they don't want to say. But then Rick Mayall over-eggs that. He does a big gurn and he pulls this face and he puts his fingernails in his mouth. And it's just like, yeah, we got it, Rick. You don't need to overdo this. Now, I get it. That is Rick Mayall's shtick. I understand it. And like I said before, if you love Rick Mayall, then great. But to me, it's just like, it's too much.
I think in this show, which is built around him, they've created it for that. It works because it's as part of the style of the show. And so just to use an example, when he crops up in Blackadder as Flashheart, I think it is completely not in keeping with the tone of that show. But that is why it works there as well, because he is.
Oh man, Alan! Again, I feel like I'm, signing my own social media death warrant here. But I hate Flashheart. It ruins that episode of Blackadder for me. I both times he's in it. It's just like, oh God, just shut up. It doesn't fit. It's like you're in the wrong show. Go and make Bottom.
Well, exactly. I think it doesn't fit, but I think it gets away with it because it's just this little flash in the pan, dare I say. And they just about get away with that.
Look, like I said before, it's all subjective. I'm not saying that Rick Mayall's bad. I'm not saying that he's a bad person. I'm not saying he's a bad actor. I'm saying that what he does, it's just not my preference. I don't like it. He's really good at what he does. It's just not for me.
Yeah, I get that. So as we come to the end of the episode, basically they decide to summon the devil. It's Halloween.
Yeah, of course.
And the motivation for this.
Can I say that there's the other joke here that really made me laugh.
Oh yeah.
They got to make a pentangle, and then he says, "Have you got any pens? Any pencils? Oh, it'll have to be a pencil tangle." Then. that really made me laugh out loud. That's a good joke.
That's because I can tell that's the weakest joke in the entire episode.
Oh, that's wordplay though. Now we got the difference between us. That's wordplay. That right there. Maybe I was just glad that I wasn't, I wasn't being hit over the head.
You can tell that's a joke though that presumably Adrian Edmondson came up with, and it's just like, that is so bad, I'm going to have to keep it in. Like, if this was a writer's room and the producers were overlooking, that would never make it. But it feels more personal. So they create a pencil tangle and try to... Richie gets his Ladybird Book of Witchcraft out and tries to summon the devil. Then, just at the right time, a young woman turns up at the door, and obviously Richie assumes this is the sort of physical representation of the devil, and they dance around that a little bit for a while. This is something we see in Bottom every now and then, where a normal person sort of enters into the world. It doesn't happen very often, but then you kind of have a normal person who's just like, this is pathetic. What are you all doing? Because even when they go to the pub, like the bar dickhead on the bar, and when the landlord comes round, I think they're all kind of extreme, grotesque characters. But then, just occasionally you will have a normal person. It just brings everything into focus. And so in this case, it is Doreen, and she's come round looking for Dave Hedgehog.
Dave Hedgehog's daughter. I will say that Doreen is an unusual name for a 10-year-old girl in 1990. I didn't know any Doreen at school.
What struck me here was that they didn't really pay this off at all. Like, they could so easily have gone further down this road where she's like, oh, I'm looking for Dave Hedgehog, and they're like, oh no, Dave has been chosen, he is going to be dragged to hell, and you know, he's scared, and he just sort of cower behind the bathtub and all that. But I just feel like that could have been a whole 5-minute sketch, like that could have been the whole part of the plot, and it's not. It's just like the end. I don't know how much real care and attention they put into the scripts of this, like how much they were kind of worried about the structure, you know.
It's an interesting point, because we've said a couple of times here that kind of all lasted a bit too long, and that bit wasn't paid off properly and was a bit rushed. So do you think that maybe they just filmed it and it took an hour and a half and they had to just brutally chop it down? Because I would imagine the scripts for this are pretty open-ended, you know, in terms of... I would imagine a script for Bottom is very, you know, here are the words, but how is the physicality choreographed?
Well, as I understand, they would aim for a 35-minute shoot and then edit it down to, you know, 29. So that's the script length they were aiming at, was about 35 minutes.
I suppose they might have filmed a whole piece about Dave Hedgehog coming to terms with fatherhood, but then they had to drop it for the third time Richie crapped himself.
I'm not convinced that happened. But yeah, we get nothing. We get no kind of payoff from that. Or even they could get a joke from the fact that he was saying he was a virgin earlier. Now he has a 20-year-old daughter. Yeah. Like, what does that mean? Anything? But basically, all it is that they think she's the devil, and then she goes, "Oh no, I'm not the devil. I'm Dave Hedgehog's daughter. My mum says I have to." She doesn't like him hanging around with that weirdo, being Richie. So it's a bit like, okay, that's the end of the show. but you know,
it just peters out.
Like I say, structure perhaps not the strong point for Bottom. But here's a little bit of interesting trivia for you. The woman there playing Doreen, a young woman, she's called Lisa Coleman. I don't suppose that name means anything to you. She was in Casualty for a couple of years. You know, she had a kind of a bit of a moment as a known actor. But her sister, I bet this name means
Charlotte Coleman.
More to you, Charlotte Coleman. Yes.
Okay.
So a man of your age
Atkins
would, remember that.
Well, Charlotte Coleman was Marmalade Atkins. Then she was in 4 Weddings and a Funeral, which is probably what most people know her for.
Yes, but their mother is Anne Beech. Does that name mean anything to you?
Oh man, this is like a quiz episode, because it does mean something to me, but I can't quite place it.
Anne Beech was one of the girls in the rag trade in the first series of the rag trade.
That's right. Yes.
The one who has the baby in the episode, one episode that we watched.
That's interesting. So I don't know Lisa Coleman, but did you tell me she was Charlotte Coleman's mother when we did our rag trade episode? Because I don't remember that.
Maybe I didn't. I don't know. I can't remember that either.
This is so good. You could tell me the same thing. Like every time we record, now I go, that's brilliant, that's fascinating.
I'm going to put it in the quiz, see if you remember. So, that's Bottom. That's their Halloween episode. It does actually play on some Halloween themes. It's not just kind of using it as a framing device, which I would say Time Gentlemen Please does. So, it's nice. It's fun. I enjoyed it. You didn't.
No, I didn't, but it was interesting, and and I guess we've not covered Bottom as a full episode review here in the same way as that we normally would, but it was certainly very interesting for me to go back and watch it again. 2 weeks ago, before we watched this, if you'd have asked me my memories of Bottom, it was very much that, at the time, I was a kid and I thought it was quite funny, but then I sort of grew out of it, and having then watched it, I haven't really changed my mind on that. It just felt a little bit childish, I'm afraid. But like I say, I think this reflects my view on Rick Mayall, which is that he's incredibly good at what he does, but what he does not appeal to me. I just find it a bit too much, a bit too in your face.
Well, I think to a large extent, Rick Mayall and Adrian Edmondson grew out of it as well, and they mentioned that in terms of like, we're just getting too old to be doing all this stupid crap. And
well, I would challenge that, because the last thing I saw Rick Mayall in was the Greg Davis program, Man Down. And he plays Greg Davis's father. Now, Man Down is, by its nature, quite cartoonish. It's all very over the top, and you could argue that Greg Davis is something of an inheritor of Rick Mayall's legacy, which is why he was a good bit of casting. But in that first series of Man Down, I found Rick Mayall just over the top, just too much. So probably not quite as physical as he was 25 years earlier, but it didn't feel like there'd been a lot of growth.
Well, I'm just thinking. I said, I've read things where they've said, "Oh, yeah, we've grown out of it," and they did the live shows for quite a considerable time after the series. That's a nice little earner, those live shows. If you can sell out those places, so fair enough. But they got to a point where they're like, "Okay, I think we've outgrown it." But come to think of it, all that stuff I was reading was all Adrian Edmondson quotes, not Rick Mayall. So maybe Adrian Edmondson outgrew it, and I think Adrian Edmondson has largely retired from comedy now anyway. Like
he's a serious actor now, isn't he? You see him in supporting roles in all sorts of things.
Yeah, and he plays folk music with the band and all that. I don't think he doesn't need the money. He's not worried about it.
Adrian Edmondson was in Star Wars. He was in the latest Star Wars.
He was, wasn't
film.
he? What was that about?
But in a really, a really throwaway role.
Yeah,
he's been in lots of sort of ITV dramas. He's an actor.
Yeah,
he's what you would call a jobbing actor.
Yeah. Whereas Rick Mayall was a comedian, a comic.
Yeah, well, Rick Mayall. Well, the truth is that Rick Mayall was Rick Mayall. In everything he did, he was full on Rick Mayall. Whereas Adrian Edmondson, he had that physicality. But if you think about Rick and Aid, you have Rick prancing about, and you have Aid next to him, and he was never as big. You would hardly describe what he did as small and subtle, but
not in a
because
kind
of the contrast.
Not in a little and large way. He's bringing a lot to that part.
I don't mean that, and I don't mean it. Well, I was going to say I don't mean it as an insult, and again, this comes back to my take on Rick Mayall. Being the same but less so, in my opinion, is better. And that's why I guess I like Adrian Edmondson a little bit more.
Well, I mean, obviously, Rick Mayall's death meant that we're not going to get that. Bottom set in a care home when they're in their 70s, which we all wanted. But I think Bottom, like you said earlier, it's kind of the ultimate, of Rick Mayall and Adrian Edmondson. But it is the quintessential. It's like the boiled down nature of that. It's unfettered by Ben Elton and or whoever else. So I think it has its place. And arguably, there's not a lot like it, really. Certainly the stuff that's like it, I associate with Rick Mayall. Like Filthy Rich and Cat Flap. Just as a little reminder, you will be able to hear Gareth's review of Filthy Rich and Cat Flap. So he's not a fan of Bottom. How does he feel about Filthy Rich and Cat Flap? Find out soon on this stream. We'll put that out very soon.
I feel the need for the first time ever on this podcast to sort of defend myself because it does feel like Rick Mayall is something of a sacred cow.
Yeah, you're going against the stream.
If it's not obvious, then, all of this is subjective. And, when we talked about Time Gentlemen Please, it was almost painful to criticise it. But with any sort of criticism, I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I'm just saying it's not for me. It's not to my taste. This is all about taste.
But when we watch Mrs. Brown's Boys, we won't be so kind.
Well, look, I know you're joking, but I think that's a really good example where 15 million people can't be wrong. Well, it is not to my taste. Can you ever say something is objectively rubbish? I don't think you can.
I don't know. I'll give it a go when we do Mrs. Brown's Boys. Honestly, Mrs. Brown's Boys is such a go-to kind of crap sitcom. I've barely watched any of it, so I don't really want to judge it harshly. But anyway, yes, and also just as another little sort of sneak peek, we will be looking at a Rick Mayall starring sitcom in our next series that will be coming up soon. But something a little bit different, but still very, very Rick Mayall.
Yes, and I think that will be interesting because I think that is the thing where Rick Mayall is least Rick.
Yes, there's still a lot.
Okay, let's leave it at that. Let's leave that teaser.
What are we talking about? Ooh. Okay, thank you very much for joining us for our Halloween special. Kind of. We won't be doing one next year because there are no other Halloween shows.
That's it. We've done it.
Okay, thank you for listening and goodbye.
Bye, everyone. Bye.